Good morning, class 12 students. This is the second part of the poem, An Elementary School Classroom in a Slum. So, before we proceed with remaining stanzas, let's discuss the portion we covered in the first video of the poem. As you are aware that the poem is written by Stephen Spender, and he describes the social inequalities which are common in our society. And through in the poem he describes the condition of the children of an elementary school which is situated in a slum area, right? And the reason to write this poem is actually to draw the attention of the concerned authorities and the people who have power, so that they could come and they could improve the lives of these children, so that they could get good education and they can become good citizens. So uh, in the first stanza that we studied in the first video, the poet, he describes the miserable condition of the children in a school, right? And yes, they seems they lacks energy, they are not exuberant, right? They're like rootless weeds. This is where the poet has used simile when he compares these children. These children are like rootless weeds, because rootless weeds, they are always thrown, they are discarded, right? Farmers also discard them, right, when they grow crop. So that's how these children are. They are like rootless weeds, right? They are worn out. They are very, their living condition is not so good. They are malnourished, they seem sick, and they are like hungry, right? Just when you see a withered weed plant when it is uprooted, right? As And similarly these children are not, they are not wanted. They are not wanted by the society or by the rich people, because nobody is paying attention to them. And they have their hair is very unmanaged, they have pale faces, right? And then he talks about a slim girl. She has her head bowed down, because she seems physically exhausted, because she is poor, and she can maybe she can, and also she cannot afford food. She's poverty stricken, right? And the other students of the class, they are like, they're not in a better situation, because there is a boy, and he seems paper seeming boy. So again it is a metaphor, because you see that comparison. The boy is compared with paper, as he is thin. So it is metaphor, because there is no use of as and like. So it is an example of metaphor here, right? And then there is a boy. He has eyes like that of a rat, right? It is searching for food and betterment. This is again an example of metaphor, rat's eye, right? uh, and then we have there is a boy who is actually a victim of genetic disorder. He inheritance, he has received gnarled bones, right, which is called twisted bones. And he has got stunted growth, right, which he has received from his father. And he's actually reciting his lesson from in a weak voice. And in the corner we have a in a poorly lit corner, there is a boy. We have a sweet boy, and he, unnoticed, he's young, he's sweet, and he's actually lost in his own dream, because he is he's distracted, and he's watching a squirrel, which is a squirrel which is in her tree room. So he is actually dreaming of, or because he desires to go out or step outside the slum, so that he could actually have fun, and he could play in an open space. So that's we discussed in the first stanza. So now let's talk about the second stanza, right? So on sour cream walls, donations, Shakespeare head, cloudless at dawn, civilized dome, riding all cities, belled, flowery, Tyrolese valley, open-handed map, awarding the world its world, and yet for these children, these windows, not this map, their world, were all their futures painted with fog. Okay, so in this particular stanza, the poet is actually describing about. In the first stanza, he described the condition of the children who were studying there, and now he's describing, the condition of the classroom. So we have a lot of poetic device. Sar means here, it refers to the color of of wall, which is a sour cream, which is white and creamish. When it is kind of a dull, and the donations received in charity. Dawn means which is early, right? And civilized dome here, it means rising sun at the horizon, which is in the shape of a dome, right? So it all looks good. And he talks about Tyrolese Valley. It is actually a beautiful ice-free valley in Austria, right? So because I believe he has mentioned all these beautiful things to compare and to bring a contrast, right? Seal, it's very simple, which is shut. And capes means a large piece of land. You know, it is a narrow street ceiling with a lead sky, far from rivers, capes, stars of words. Right? Capes is a large piece of land that sticks out into the sea from the coast. So this is the second stanza. You could see that the poet is describing the condition, not the condition of the school, yes, and also the wall of the school, right? So he says that the classrooms, they are very dirty, and on the walls you could actually see that on display we have so many things, things which we the school must have received as donations or in charity, right? So the first line, let me just scroll it back. On sour cream walls. So this is an example of metaphor, because here classrooms, because you see the comparison between because the class, because walls are described as, because they are very dull, because it seems they are not well maintained, right? So it is an example of metaphor. And narrow street sealed with a lead sky, this line also depicts, or there is an underlining meaning, that the future of the kids is, it is described that it is shut, they don't have any future. So it is an example of metaphor, right? So as I've already mentioned, that this poem is actually, it's full of poetic devices, right? So we have charts, we have pictures, we have the bust of Shakespeare. It is actually the head of Shakespeare, which is displayed in clear background of the sky. So Shakespeare, it is also an example of, it is an example of, you can say, this images or symbolism, because Shakespeare symbolizes education. It is highest figure in English literature, right? And these Tyrolese Valley, again, it is an example of images and symbolism, because it is a beautiful valley in Austria. And then there is this open-handed map. It is where, you imagine this, right? So this is all these are an example of images and symbolism, right? And awarding, then we have awarding the world its we have in this fourth line, awarding the world its world. So it's actually, it means that the rich people who have drawn these maps, they have actually depicted the places which are unreachable for these children, understand? So we have donations, we have Shakespeare head, right? And we also have a picture of beautiful Tyrolese Valley, and yes, also a world map, right? So this map means nothing to these children. Why? Because they can only, because they're, they don't have so much to see, because they are shut, in a narrow road, right? And which is enclosed with a dull sky. So it is actually very depressing for these children, when they see, because it also tempts them to escape the school and to go for searching, but they cannot go unless and until they have good education. Understand? So these windows, not this map, their world. So this map is nothing for them, right? The map they have on the wall, because this map shows all the places they have never been to and they will never be able to, I believe, because nobody is paying attention to them. That is why Stephen Spender is lashing out at lashing out on people who have power, and obviously the government authorities, right? And that is why it is called the futures painted with fog. Again, it is an example of metaphor. Future painted with fog, which means they have no future. Fog, it's which is unclear, which is so they don't have any hope. So this is an example of metaphor, right? An open-handed map, the map drawn by the rich people. Surely Shakespeare is okay, let me just highlight it first. Surely Shakespeare is wicked. The map is a bad example, with ships and suns and love tempting them to steal. So in this line, you could actually see that the poet has called. He has said that Shakespeare is he's wicked. Why has he called him wicked? Because Shakespeare, he is an epitome of high, literally, and obviously when we talk about English literature, his name cannot be left behind, right? So I don't think there is I don't think there is any teaching or learning takes place, right? So for these children, it is like Shakespeare education is like far cry, right? So that is why Shakespeare has been described as wicked, because they don't know anything about Shakespeare, because there is no teaching of Shakespeare. And with ships and suns and love tempting them to steal, and then the pictures which have the images which have sun and ships, right? They are all tempting. They are tempting these they're actually attracting these children to to step out and to steal. Understand? Okay. So for lives that slyly turn into their cramped holes, from fog to endless night on their slag heap, these children wear skins peeped through by bones and spectacles of steel with mended glass like bottle bits on stones. All of their time and space are foggy slum, so blot their maps with as big as dumb. So first we'll discuss the difficult word meaning, right? Then I will explain the meaning. Wicked means evil, right? And tempted means which persuade, and slyly means trickly, and cramped means which is confined, restricted, right? Not very spacious. Slag here, it means weak. Mended means repair, and blot means it is actually a black spot, and doom means is disaster, right? So in and let's talk about the poetic devices we have in this particular paragraph. Metaphor, their homes are very small, like holes, cramped holes, right? So it is again in poetic devices that they are actually living in a very confined area. And then we have simile, like their repaired spectacles, like bottle bits on stones. So this again depicts their conditions, right? And how their specs are, they're like repaired spectacles, right? And then we have alliteration. You see fog, you see this f sound is being repeated from fog, right? So this is an example of alliterations. Understand? So in this particular stanza, the poet says that these children, they are actually living in a slum area, and they faced so many difficulties, right? And so for them, Shakespeare is an evil man, that because there is hardly any teaching of Shakespeare. And the things that they the things which are displayed on the photographs and the images which are pasted on the wall, they are actually exciting or tempting them to steal, or to go and snatch all the things they desire, right? And when can they have all these things? When they are educated, right? And when they will be educated, when somebody make it ensure that they get good education, but nobody is paying attention to them, right? So they actually live in a very small homes. Slum, because slum you don't find very slum, they are not spacious, they are very they have small lack of places, they have to add, they have to adjust, right? And they wear skins peep through. This is again an example of metaphor which which shows that these kids are so thin that you could actually see their bones, you can count their bones, right? So which clearly shows that they're actually suffering from malnutrition. And the spectacles they are wear, they are actually made of steel, right? So they are very cheap, they have mended, they have repaired it, these are repaired spectacles, right? Must have thrown by some rich people, and they have used it. Understand? So these spectacles, they looks like stones, right? Bottle bits of stones. So this is an example of simile because we see the use of like here. So the poet here tries to explain, he explains that these kids, they are facing so many challenges or obstacles in their lives, and somebody needs to do something. So it is actually very difficult for them to escape the clutches of their fate, unless, let's talk about the second, I mean the last stanza of this poem. Unless governor, inspector, visitor, this map becomes their window, and these window that shut upon their lives like catacombs break open till they break the town and show the children to green fields and make their world run azure on gold sands, and let their tongues run naked into the books, white and green leaves open, history theirs whose language is the sun. So this is the last stanza. So I will be discussing the difficult words and the poetic devices that have been used in this particular stanza, and the explaining part of the stanza will be covered in the last video, in the third video of the poem, An Elementary School Classroom in a Slum Area, in a slum, right? So in this we don't have so many difficult word meanings here. We just have catacombs, which means tomb or cemetery, or it is also called the passages used for burying dead people, especially it is used in ancient times, right? So catacombs is like a tomb, or a series of underground chambers, right? And we have azure, which means deep blue, this deep blue. And the poetic devices, we have metaphor, the white green leaves open. The white green leaves open, it means it's here, sorry, let me just hide it, this white and green leaves. Okay, I think this is the line I'm talking about. So so books and nature are expressed in the form of white and green leaves. So you could actually see the comparison, right, without using as in like. And then we have this anaphora. Anaphora is when you see that a word is being repeated in the beginning of followed clause, right? So you could actually see that specific pattern, run and run, right? So this is an example of anaphora. So this is the poetic device we have. And yes, images and symbols, it's very this let their tongues run naked into books means let them get education. This is this is an example of metaphor, right? Explaining part will be done in the third part of the video. Understand? And gold sands, this is also an example of symbols and images, because when we talk about gold sands, you think about the ocean and sand and all. So I think that's all we have in this poem in today's session. So we'll make a final video for this poem, and in this final video we will be discussing the remaining the part that we discussed in the last video and today's video, and also the remaining stanza, I think the last stanza, right, where the poet is actually he's trying to show that their lives can only be improved if this happens, right? So that's all for today's session. In case you have any questions, please do find. And as you have already been informed that You need to prepare yourselves for lots of MCQs because your term 1 is based on MCQ, right? It's a 90 minutes. So you need to prepare yourself, and I have already started giving you questions related to MCQs. So please do it faithfully, positively, and make sure you fare them out in your notebooks. Thank you, everyone.